Hello, everyone. Welcome to Ask an Expert. Kinsey and I are so excited to be here. If you've been watching in recent weeks, you know that Kinsey and I have not been here a lot to host. But our guest today is Patricia Da Silva, the founder of ECOGOLD. And we were trying to resist the urge to come and host, and we couldn't resist the urge because we absolutely love Patricia and we're so inspired by who she is as a person and what she's built with her brand and kind of the why behind all of it. So we moved some meetings around. We actually moved a meeting with the Carters around so that we could be here. And we're so happy to be here with Patricia and here with all of you. So to start, Patricia, I'll just say, I know you're incredibly busy, and thank you so much for spending the hour with us tonight.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
So Kinsey and I got to meet you in person at Land Rover last year. And I remember, I think we met in the middle of our booths and we started chatting, and like 5 minutes into the conversation, I feel like I was like, Kinsey, go get a notebook. Like you were sharing so much great insight and just wisdom. Like it just spills out of you. So we've been excited to have this conversation with you tonight. We labeled this topic as building a successful equestrian brand. But one thing that we've talked about already is that there are parallels between building a brand and being an equestrian, especially an adult amateur equestrian. There's hardship and successes and huge decisions and an importance to catering to your mental health. So we'll take this conversation wherever it takes us. But anyone who's here in person, first of all, please say hello in the chat. We'd love to know you're here. We'd love to hear where you're tuning in from. And then, of course, feel very welcomed to ask your questions for Patricia as we go. But before we dive in, Patricia, will you tell us where you are and then give us a little bit of, and I know this is a hard question, but give us a little bit of your story about like what prompted you to start EcoGold, when was that, and give us some insight into that journey.
Okay, so where I'm in Montreal, Canada. You can't see outside my window, but it's snowing right now. And the journey, I didn't actually start the company. It was my father's business. And he was a textile engineer. He, knew about machinery and fabrics and whatnot. And long story short, we got into equestrian products and trying to make them more innovative, bring the athleticism or the athletic wear into equestrian sports. And I joined the business. I think it started in 1990. So some of you are probably not born. It's been
That's
33 years. Yeah, exactly. And then, so I took it over. I started there. I was VP marketing for a number of years. And then I became president in 2019. So that's what happened. And, it's a really fun business. We make saddle pads, if you don't know what we do. And we have our own factory here in Montreal, like 5 minutes from my house. It's a small business. We've had workers there that have worked with us for 15 years. And it's a great, great way to make a living.
Totally. And we were so lucky because we had a meeting with you probably, I don't know if it was a few months ago or 6 months ago now, but you were at the office. So you got to give us a FaceTime tour of the factory, which was really, really cool, like behind the scenes to see how these saddle pads are made, because of course we get to like see them at the tack store, but seeing like the amount of care that goes into each one is really amazing. Will you describe to us in your role as president, how many years have you been in the role as president, and how do you think about moving the business forward? Is that meeting certain metrics or accomplishing a vision in a more full way? Like what's driving you right now?
Yeah, I think there's it's twofold. One, there's the business aspect, and yes, like there's numbers and metrics and whatnot, what you want to accomplish. But also, I think, I'm at a stage in my life where then it's like who you are as a person and how you evolve in that in that as well that's important. So there's some people that like are just about the business, but I think it needs to be a greater purpose or a greater mission, and like why we do this, because it could be, you know, if it was just about the metrics, maybe I wouldn't be producing them here. But for me, it's about the impact on the community. And it's the workers, and a lot of them are first time immigrants, people that move into our neighborhood. Our neighborhood here in Montreal, it's very multicultural. There's a mix of cultures. There's over 70 different countries and languages spoken within like a mile, which is incredible. So I think it's bringing that, and then you bring the equestrian industry, and the aspect like that's very important to me is the love for animals. So like I've always been very passionate about all kinds of animals as long as there's fur. Like, I want to pet it. So I think like bringing what you really love or what you're passionate about and making that a life's purpose, or that's important. Whereas like if it was just about the business, maybe it would be approached in a different way. So even when people go about their like amateur career or equestrian career, like I think like there needs to be more than, you know, like I'm passing the time or I'm enjoying this or I like competing. I think if you bring in another aspect and what's important as a wider, because your time on earth is finite, right? Like you only have a set number of days, and we get to the end, and what have you done, or what have you spent the time, and what of course, like there's resources, there's money, etc., that are valuable, but I think like how you spend that time is almost just as important as what you get at the end. So that's how I value success. So sometimes it's not about just the metrics. Like I think there needs to be more, in my view.
Yeah, absolutely. I could not agree more. And I think a lot of times if your values and your the way that you look at success is kind of more mission driven, the metrics kind of come like as long as you're like if you're actually fulfilling that goal, like there has to be some sort of something you're actually doing and some sort of real impact that you're having. So I really like that approach. Patricia, what is your personal background? Like I know, so you mentioned that your dad founded the company. What brought you on board? And also, are you a rider yourself?
Well, I rode as a kid and then I fell off. And then I said, this isn't fun. And then my trainer at the time said, oh, she'd be wonderful as a groom. So it wasn't like that. Oh, it was hysterical. But my background professionally, I have a marketing degree. So that was like my goal in life was to work in an advertising agency and do marketing. I work in the corporate world as well. We put a company that sells paper. Oh, that was fun. But as a marketing manager, brand manager, so that's my background. And then my father was the textile engineer, and we met some riders. We got into this industry, we're by chance, if you will, and we kind of mixed both his talents for production and then my vision for marketing and sales and that sort of thing.
It's honestly like Kinsey and I can kind of relate to your and your dad's journey. Kinsey and I have totally different skill sets. And so they come together nicely in a business. And I'm sure that you can relate to like, it's actually very helpful not to overlap too much when you're working on a very, very small team, like a leadership team anyways, because you know that when it comes to marketing, you can kind of lead the way in those efforts. And your dad probably has known that the production fell under his realm. So yeah, that's helped Kinsey and I anyways, just to make decisions quickly and kind of know whose domain is whose. one thing that I would love to dive into with you is, before we got on here, you mentioned that building a business is not linear. And I think there are very few things that are linear when it comes to personal growth or to pursuing a goal. And you also talked about how you've given discussions at like business school to talk about failures, and when things are not linear, they generally involve failures. So, will you talk to us about your perspective approaching your leadership role at EcoGold, and like just embracing the fact that it's not linear, and how you continue to try to move in the right direction while giving space to the fact that not every day is going to be a step forward from the day before?
Yeah, I think very important is to work on yourself, like know yourself as a person. I think and it's, it seems silly and very new agey, but it will, knowing what makes you feel good, or what makes you happy, or what can kind of take you from despair and being really sad, like for on business issues, because you will have things that days that everything goes wrong, or the materials don't come, or you made a mistake, or client you thought a sale was coming isn't coming, or whatever. So there's going to be disappointments like throughout, like weekly weekly, monthly, big ones, small ones, and it's how you respond to that challenge that will make you kind of clean the slate and start afresh, or you can be depressed and go towards like, all levels of depression. So I think first you need to know yourself and what makes you feel good. And for a lot of people in this, it could be just going riding, right? So people who are lucky to ride, if they have disappointments at work or in other fields, like they go ride and they automatically feel better. And or animals, like walking the dog, petting a cat, like it could be as silly as that, or going out for ice cream, or whatever it is. So I think that, and then you start approaching, I think, like even like I don't journal, but I think like if you journal and you write like the things that, like, even days where something has gone wrong, like write like 3 things that you succeeded at, because your day is not all failure, right? There's things like maybe you cooked dinner, like that's a success. Right? I think like managing the mental side of things is huge for success in business or in the ring, or wherever it is. So it starts there. I think knowing yourself and knowing how you can get out of that mindset is going to help you move forward.
That's really great advice. And I think, yeah, the mental side of things is definitely something that requires intentionality if you're going to harness it or feel like not that you have control over it, but that you're in a healthy place mentally. Because there are a lot of things in life that can pull us in different directions that compromise our mental health and happiness. One thing that you just said that I have put into practice as well is, I used to get done with my work days and I would think like, man, I can't believe that I didn't get those 100 things done. Like I start the day so aspirationally, and I hope that I can get my list of things done. And by no lack of trying, I was still ending every day with thinking about how many things I had to get done. And at one point when that was really weighing on me, or like just the work in general was weighing on me, I made the decision to shift to, at the end of the day, intentionally thinking about the things I had gotten done, not the things that I had not gotten done, because then it can be like I can end the day and be like, that's pretty impressive. Like if somebody else was working on our team, I would not have expected them to get all of these things done. And that really helped put me in a more positive frame of mind. You mentioned, Patricia, that you're not a journaler. Is there anything that has helped you better understand what you need to stay happy and maybe even like the things that bring you joy?
You mean, like I don't journal, but I'm, like I think.
Yep.
So, certain mantras, for example, my father always used to say, it's not a problem, it's a challenge. And like, you're strong enough to like get it done. And it's being patient with yourself. So I don't necessarily write things, but I always remember that it's not a problem, it's a challenge, and like I can do it. But it's okay. Like maybe I can't do it today, you know? Maybe it's not today, maybe it will be tomorrow. So, you have to be patient and you have to be kind to yourself. And maybe it's not going to be now. And it's okay to be sad. I think like you have to go through the emotions of, you can't like, there's a lot of people who are like, how are you? Fine. You're always fine. You're always happy. You're always like you're lying to yourself. It's okay like not to be okay. And like, but I think it needs to be finite in time. Like, so I give myself like, okay, in the evening today I can be sad, or today, but tomorrow is a new day. So you kind of need to, unless like it's something really awful, like not someone dies and like I get it, but I think like you just like disappointments at work, and I think it's also the experience that helps, saying, oh, I was in that situation like 3 years ago, and or I sometimes I tell people, I said, in a year you're not going to even worry about this, like something that sounds like super super important, and you're like, oh my god, da, da, da. In a year you won't even remember this. So you put levels. So those things, I think experience helps, and remembering certain things that people have told you.
Yeah, Patricia, how much are you, because I know like you're running a very significant brand. How much are you communicating these highs and lows with the people that you work with?
None. So you mean the people I work with? No.
Yeah.
Not really. Like, I think like you don't want to trouble other people with your problems. I think when you have success, then yes, like if on the successes, but I think the people that work with you, like you don't want to worry them. But like they're part of the success, yes. But you're not going to tell them we lost our client, or something like that. No.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like this is Kinsey and my first attempt at leadership, and we're doing a lot of like reading and learning from people who are great leaders to try to establish our own way of being leaders. But you're definitely someone. I mean, I mentioned that you have this like calm and insightful and wise nature about you. And I remember, I think at Land Rover, you told us the advice that you just mentioned about, in a year, this might not matter. And that is a way to like come back to center. But I also like those days that might cause you to beat yourself up. And I think this is applicable to business or not business. It reminds me of Brené Brown, who, if you've read her books, or she has a Netflix special, you've probably heard all about what she thinks about vulnerability. But one thing that she says about vulnerability is, if you are vulnerable, you're going to fail. And Brené says, when I tell people that, they're nodding like they get it. And she's like, they don't get it. What they hear me say is, if you're vulnerable, you might fail. She's like, I didn't say might fail. I said, you are going to fail. And so sometimes when Kinsey and I have a really hard day in the business, or I'm disappointed in myself for something, like, for example, Kinsey and I did a pitch competition like 6 months ago, and we ended up winning. But before we knew we won, I was so down on myself because I forgot what I was supposed to say halfway through this pitch competition in front of probably 200 or 300 people. And Kinsey had flown in from New York. And I was just like, man, I really blew it and let my sister down. But truly after that, when I was down about it, I was like, Brene Brown says, if you're going to be vulnerable, you're going to fail. And we've had many, many times that I feel disappointed in myself and like I wish I would have done better. But I think that that's something that people can relate to, whether it's as a parent or as an equestrian. Those days are going to come if you're trying something that is difficult and outside of your comfort zone.
Yep. And if it's something new, you're going to suck at the beginning. I think that I think we have an idea of success that like it needs to be fast. Like we need to be good like from day 2. We don't give ourselves the time. Sometimes like it only clicks like after 10 times or after a certain amount. So it's patience and repetition too. So don't give up too fast. Don't give up before you succeed, right? And there's a fine line.
Totally. Yes, that's definitely true. And it's one of those things that it can make looking back kind of cringy. Like I think there's a saying that if you're not embarrassed by the first day of the business you launched or the first phase of the business you launched, then you launched too late. Like you should be embarrassed by that because you're going to be bad at it and it's going to look horrible. And that's, I mean, that kind of, and when Kinsey and I started doing these interviews, we weren't very good at it either. And everyone listening is probably like, you're still not that good at it. But believe it or not, this is better than we were before. We at least got the microphones. So Patricia, when you, as a business leader, when you speak to people who have goals, whether they're in business or not in business, but maybe it's easiest to frame this question as like somebody who's considering starting their own business, what is the advice that you would give to that person or the things that you would ask them to consider?
And it's a business aspect?
Let's start there. Yeah.
Well, have enough money to start and to stay in business. Because that's, I think when you start, that's the big struggle. And, have, if you don't know something, surround yourself with people who know. Like, don't try and, like, I'm not a big fake it till you make it. Like, I think you need to learn things. You can't just like pretend. And, it's so easy nowadays to just launch something, but I think you need to make sure you're doing it the right way and you have enough to sustain yourself or a way, it takes time. Anything takes time. So I think why on the business side, why people fail is because they thought they were going to have success quicker or faster, or because they don't realize how much money it takes. So, keep your day job and put work on your business on the side. That's what I would suggest.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. How do you guys, I mean, it's been 30 some years. I mean, this year is, aren't you celebrating 30 years or something this year?
Yeah, 33.
33 years. And that's a huge accomplishment. That's like unbelievable. But one thing that I want to learn from you is like, you're decades into this and you guys are still a leading equestrian brand. Like you guys are still at the forefront of the market. How do you think you guys stay so ahead of the trends and ahead of the technology in order to maintain that positioning?
Well, the fact we're not big, we're a small company still, and that makes you agile. And so it's not like if you work and there's 500 people in your company, it takes 500 people to convince to we go, okay, let's do this. It's way harder to right a ship that's going in the in a different direction. Whereas the fact that we're small, we're quick, we're agile, that's how you keep up with things. So we could have an idea, and we're working on something new right now, And it's like within 2 weeks, like we have prototypes, we have, we test it and we can launch something within like a month, which is not done at a bigger. So we have a lean operation. And I think also it's the being creative and being curious and like always not just resting on your laurels, or because there's not a point where, like, maybe some people do, but in my view, I've never made it. You're still, hustling every day because you don't think that you've made it. Once you reach a certain point, you want to do more, or you want to go. And so you don't get a point. Like, people think whether it's, I think Olympic riders would think the same thing. Like, you think as an amateur, you might think, oh, like someone's a professional, like they've made it or they've been to the Olympics. Those people are never satisfied. They're always seeking learning, and they're going to clinics themselves. They're getting lessons themselves. So it's not like you reach a point in your life and you just go, okay, so it's always being curious, always checking like what's happening, what are people doing. Like, in my industry, I look a lot at other sports. And so there was a lot of innovation in those companies. So looking at what's happening in, those types of businesses, and you're like, oh, you have an idea. But I think it's passion too. If you love what you do and you're passionate, you're always looking to improve. You're always looking to do things better. So
totally. There's definitely a hunger that comes along with passion. And this is really interesting that you're talking about this, because it parallels a conversation that we recorded like 6 hours ago, probably, with Dickie Waygood, who's the high performance manager for the British dressage team and now the British eventing team. He's led both of those teams to gold medal finishes at the Olympics. And he talked about what you're talking about. And part of it is the importance of curiosity. And I would say if there's a common thread between all of our Ask an Expert episodes, it's this, like, the so much importance within being a curious person around the thing that you're passionate about. That's a factor that's necessary if you're going to really accomplish something amazing. You mentioned looking to other sports to get inspiration about how they're innovating. Are there other efforts that have been helpful for you in a personal growth perspective, like whether that's reading or podcasts or finding inspiration outdoors? What are kind of the efforts that you make that you're just like, this is good for Patricia being her most creative and innovative self?
I think walking for some reason. I walk a lot. I live in a city, so it's not everyone can, but I mean, it's the cheapest mode of transportation. And I think like walking, definitely I listen to a lot of podcasts, and just, what else? Other sports, checking what's happening. Now I'm into, like, I don't do it, but I check every piece of clothing of cross-country skiing. I'm in winter. I'm like, oh, I wish I could do that. And checking out the gear, the clothing, because at some point it was really cold here. It was minus 41 Celsius, which is nuts. We had like this really polar, what is it? Like a polar something. It was like 3 days of like extreme cold. I've never been this cold. Like, I was wearing like 2 sweaters. I'm like, how do these guys do it? Those the athletes that are in the winter outside. And so I've learned a lot about what they wear, and how it's important to have like different pairs of gloves, because they get wet and then you lose heat. And anyways, I've been reading a lot about like thermal, conserving energy, and et cetera, et cetera. So.
Wow, yeah, that's fascinating. When you're reading that stuff, are you are you doing it as like I wonder if I could use this for my own company, or are you just trying to educate yourself and then maybe one day, okay, that's
like how to stay warm. Because it was literally minus 41. And what's funny is that how these athletes, like cross country skiers, specifically, because I mean they go, it doesn't matter what weather, right? And how the thermal aspect helps horses. Like that's how I design new pads, because we go, you know, there's the breathability, and in the winter, if you're, you know, the cross country skiers, for example, if they have wet gloves, they lose heat, and that's not good, right? So it's the same thing with, like, you know, with saddle pads. If your saddle pad's all wet, your horse is gonna lose heat in the winter. Let's assume it's cold, and it will take more time to recover, right? Whereas like thermal, so like I went on this journey of the internet, just like how to stay warm because it was really cold, and then, you know, maybe it will be a product about like the importance of sweat evaporation and all that, like how that helps. But
Yeah, I feel like you, as the president of a business, you take in information and almost unintentionally start applying it to your craft, which is such a gift. You can tell the products that are made with that amount of care. I'm interested to know, as you were talking about different sports, is EcoGold, do you guys cater to, I know you're within dressage, eventing, hunter jumpers. How many different disciplines are you specifically catering to?
like all the English ones and Western. So Western, they have a lot of different Western disciplines. They have like barrels and, like I said, reining. So those, we have Western pads, and then English, like hunter, jumper, dressage, and eventing.
That's really interesting. And Kinsey and I have not embarked on Western disciplines with Ride IQ. We're dipping our toe in, but to be honest, I don't know a lot about those communities. Given that you cater to all those different communities, will you share your perspective on like how much do they differ? Is there something that is the umbrella that unites all of them, or they might as well they be totally different sports aside from the fact that the horse is there?
Well, I think that, no, I think like a rider is a rider, in my view. I think, like, I always think of ways to unite people, and that humans, we love to separate into categories. Like, I'm this, I'm this, I'm this, but we're more similar than we're like separate or apart. So, but I don't think, you know, there's differences because, you know, but I find that there's a lot of people, I don't know if it was always like this, but I find there's a lot of people who cross over more than before. And I don't know if they listen more to the horse and they go, well, I'm an eventer, but this horse likes to show jump, so I'm going to show jump. And I think that we can't be too, you know, we can't push people to like be in a box too much. I think like you're allowed to, you know, if your horse likes Western, why not? Like, why not take lessons from another discipline? And I think from all the years, like now people are more willing to switch, and I don't know if there's less pressure or people want to live their best lives or what. But I feel when I started, people were more in like little boxes. And now we have a lot of clients who move back and forth, or let's say a couple and one person is a Western rider, the other one, and they kind of, you know, maybe they don't practice the same sport, but I think there needs to be an understanding. But people are the same. Like, of course, like there's certain people, if you don't like to jump, you're going to go more towards dressage. And so, but we're more similar than we think.
It's really reassuring to me that you're seeing more fluidity between the different disciplines, because I think that's a great a great move for the whole industry and the individual and the horses. Like I think everyone benefits the more that happens. To what extent do you feel like, how are you running this? Like, how much do you have to educate yourself on the various disciplines in order to feel like you're definitely making a product that is appropriate for them? Like there must be some of that. Or are you hiring experts that are like within the Western disciplines to consult on the various products that you're creating for them?
Yeah, I think that even the English ones, I think the most important, if anybody is listening and has a marketing degree or is in marketing, is the ability to listen. Because even if it's something that you use, that you like, that you, it doesn't mean other people view it the same way, consume it the same way. So I think you need to, like, yes, you come with your own biases and ways of doing things, but the more you listen to people, the more you know how to, you know, like kind of judge what is good information, what is not good information, who can you trust, who can't you trust, and not trust, like, not because but they give you information that is going to be useful and helpful. So I think like sifting through the different sources, but I think you need to do that regardless. And when you're going blind, Western, I don't know anything about Western, then you get people who know, and not just one, but if you can have like 3, 4, 5, 6 sources of, okay, what is your, and then interpreting what they say. And sometimes people will say things in like what they know. So you have to go, okay, like, how can I solve a problem? So hearing their problems and not necessarily the solution, if that makes sense. Because the solution, like, you're the expert in making saddle pads or, whatever it is. So what do you need it to do? What, and then I'll take it from there. Like what size it needs to be, that they need to tell me. But they can't just go, oh, do this, and they give me something else, because that never works. So it's like absorbing information and then knowing what to do with that. If that makes sense. It's like a meeting of the minds. Like, you're the expert in the horses, I'm the expert in this other thing. And if they tell me the problems or how, like, what are your issues, then I usually can find a solution.
Totally. That is such good advice. And that's been the thing that's served us the most in our business, or like given us the most clarity, is doing exactly what you just said. Like just giving people space and inviting them to share about their experiences, good and bad, and fully hearing them, not just through the lens of like, this is our current product, but like just understanding their experience. So then it's a lot easier to know how you can either solve the problem or add value. But I think that, especially in my previous jobs that were at larger businesses, now looking back, it's amazing to me that we didn't dedicate a lot of time and effort to interacting directly with the customers, or at minimum, like hearing from them where they are in the world, whether that's like how they show up on social media, how they're talking about what we're doing. It really felt like we were kind of building in a bubble, which now I would never do that.
Mm-hmm.
Patricia, one thing that I definitely maybe selfishly want to learn from you today, given your experience, is what would you tell yourself as you were embarking on your VP of marketing role, or maybe embarking on your president role, either one, like looking back to that version of Patricia, what guidance would you give yourself in terms of how to, maybe like how to avoid mistakes?
Mm. Well, that's a big loaded question. I think it's to me, it's more take it every day. Take it every day as you go, because you know, like looking in 20 years, like it's too much. Like your brain can't even fathom that. I think like, you know, enjoying the journey, and it sounds corny, but I think that's what needs to be. And you can't really compare. Like you're always comparing yourself with other companies, with other people, with other, and you don't know what their problems are, but I'm sure that sometimes they're worse than yours. I think like not comparing yourself, but also, you know, I sometimes think what my life would have been had I stayed in the corporate world. But you always think like on your less good days, like, oh, it would have been like, you know, would have been more relaxing, or it would have been less stressful, or a more secure way to live. But you don't know. Like maybe I would have been laid off. Maybe I would have been, you know, like, so you don't know. And so, you know, it's. I don't think like when I started, I would have thought of like in 20 years where I'm gonna be. So you just, you know, you do your best every day, and you can't have regrets. Like that's what I know. And also I think, you know, you're not stuck in this journey forever. You know, like I always think it's important to get skills along the way. So if this doesn't work out, like you have options, um, and you're okay with it. And then 20 years later, you're still here. But I think like knowing that I don't need to do this, like it puts like, it's more of a choice. It's like, you know, people who are married for a long time and every day they kind of commit to each other. You're not stuck in that relationship, but you're choosing to be there. So that's how I would put it.
That's really beautiful, Patricia. Yeah, your wisdom is just, it's an never ending stream of wisdom whenever we talk to you. And it makes me so happy. One thing I would love to hear from you is whether or not, are you somebody who like sets goals, like short-term or long-term goals for yourself or the business?
Yeah, in business for sure. They're not always reached, so then I get really angry. But yeah, and then when we reach them, we, you know, we get champagne and we buy a cake. That's what we do.
I
So
love that
fun.
you have a party.
Oh, we do.
How do you have a very structured way that you approach your goals? Is it every quarter, or is it like as you see the opportunity?
Kind of. I think like quarterly is good, but then sometimes you can't. Like it doesn't always work. So we do year and month and year and quarter.
I like that. I mean, goals are a great way to remind yourself of like, one, what you should prioritize, and two, why you're doing the thing you're doing. Like because this will get me closer to that goal that I defined. I'm curious to know a lot of things. Kinsey slacked me and was like, "You're asking 10 questions at once," and I can't help it because I have 10 questions at once. I would love to know, and this might make you feel like shy, but what would you define as your zone of genius in your work? Like, what's your
Uh,
superpower?
I think bringing people together, and I think I'm very happy-go-lucky, and so in life and at work. And yes, like there's time where we have to do things, but I think that, you know, taking pleasure on what you do, and then it makes people want to do stuff for you. It's easier. I think like there's different kinds of leadership, and you see this in sport. Like maybe your trainer, there's people who need other people that yell at them, which is, you know, good for you if you're that. I've never liked that. I remember I took swimming lessons as a little kid in school, and I, then I wanted to be sick every day because I didn't like it. And my mom, I said, "Oh, I have a headache." And today is like swimming lesson. My mom, then she's like, "I'm going to go see her swimming lesson because she doesn't want to go." And then I didn't like when they told me, "Okay, like now you have to swim here, 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 here." But when they said, "Okay, now you can do whatever," then I was like swimming, I was having fun. So I don't want to be told, like, you have to do this, right? So it, like, we each respond differently to different styles of leadership. So I always hated like people who are very disciplined, like they yell at you and they tell you, or like now it would be called toxic, but it was very that's how it was in different businesses. I've had people yell at me, and it's like, no, that isn't gonna work. So I think like the superpower is bringing people together, and I think like if they're happy to do the work, then they'll want to. You have to be self-motivated, so you kind of have to motivate other people. That's the way. I think that's my superpower.
That's an amazing superpower. That is yeah, it's no wonder that you are so successful in what you do, because that's a really important aspect of success. When you add people to your team, or like, I mean, you mentioned some people have been on your team for over a decade. Like, how are you finding the right people? Like, what is your hiring process look like?
So I think that, skill, talent, but personality is a big, big, big part. So you have to have people who they can adapt. They can, because we, as a small business, it's this, but maybe I say the opposite tomorrow, and you have to be cool with it. Like this. So I think like that, but one, like if you have no skill like that, then, sometimes you think, oh, they'll learn. No, they don't. So I think you have to have a base of like pure skill that is like non-negotiable. And then personality, what is the aptitude? I think like learning, like someone that is teachable, wants to learn, is a plus, because then they have upside. And does this person complete me? Like the Jerry Maguire style? Like do they bring? Are they a puzzle piece in the puzzle, or do they drain energy? If they drain energy, like they have to go. You can't have those people. Like you guys can hire them. Like I.
No, do not send them our way.
No, but then it will. There's people who then maybe they have skill, but they drain your energy. So then you're like, they're at 95%, but now you're at 50%, because you have to manage them. Like you need to be at 100%. They need to be at, whatever the threshold is that you decide. That's how we hire.
I think that, well, you definitely are speaking from experience because you have that figured out. And I'm intrigued by what you're sharing in terms of like, recognize if they're draining your energy, because if they are, then that's not a positive impact on you or your team or what you're trying to do together. And recognizing that takes a bit of like trusting how you're feeling, which in moments of doubt, it's easy to be like, well, this person has these specific qualifications and that should make them the best. And in Kinsey and my very limited experience, it's not about what the piece of paper says or what the LinkedIn profile says. It's so much about knowing the person and trusting how they're making you feel. But I also think that some of it, I mean, for us anyways, there, like you mentioned, that there's a base level of skill that's required. There's a like amount of drive and interest that's required too. And I think that's something that you kind of observe on the job. In our experience, is that something that you've been able, like, are you do you have a great sense of people when you meet them so that you can understand whether their like work ethic and enthusiasm is genuine?
I think that we, as managers, we are like, we can't expect people to be as passionate about a business or a journey or your barn, if you are, whatever it is. And you have to have like realistic expectations. And so no one is like you. No one has the same stake. Like, there's some people, like, it's a job and that's it. So you can't expect them to be as, so the goals are different. So, they have to be, for me, they have to be competent at their job. They have to be pleasant as a person, but you can't ask for something that is not, like, that they might not give. And that's okay. I don't need them to have, I need them to be honest. I think that's important. Honesty, fair, self-motivated, but not like, they don't need to have like a crazy work ethic like me, because they don't own the business. So I'm realistic on that side of things.
I think that's really smart. Yes, people have shared that advice with us, and it's good to go into hiring conversations with a much more realistic lens. Like, they're not going to be as excited as you are as the person who started this, and that's totally okay. And great. Like, they'll add a lot of things that we can, like Kinsey and I don't add, or you don't add. One thing that I would love to hear from you. So Kinsey and I, we talk to a lot of adult amateurs. A lot of Ride IQ members are adult amateurs, and I know you guys cater to adult amateurs as well. Definitely not exclusively, but including adult amateurs. How would you describe adult amateur equestrians, and what are the things that you admire about them?
They're great. Well, time management, I don't know how they get to ride so much and compete, because I just work and, but I think what's fun is that maybe it's funny, but I find that having a normal life, if you will, like, everything's normal, and riding, like, they don't compromise on the riding. Like, it's important to them. They're going to make time for it, and it makes them better people, or makes them more whole or more centered. I think, spending time with animals, but horses specifically, it's a huge time commitment. It's a huge money commitment. It's so I find them very interesting. And the fact too that in this industry we get to meet so many people from different ways and different walks of life, but the one thing that they're united by is their passion for horses and riding. And so I think, it's a lot of fun. I love talking to adult amateurs, or, people that email me about saddle pads, or about, whatever it is. It's always fun. And, you have people with amazing jobs, and they're going to probably not pick up the phone, but if it's about the horse, for sure they'll pick up, and it's pretty amazing. Yep.
It is unbelievable what these adult amateurs are able to accomplish. Like, I am in absolute awe of every single one of them, because we talk to them and someone will be like, so yeah, I get out of bed at 4:30 in the morning and then I go ride from 5 to 6. And I'm like, you are amazing. Like, you're amazing. So yeah, I have so much respect for that endeavor. And you're so right that it is like, it's this unifying thing. Like, it doesn't matter what you do for work. It doesn't matter like what your beliefs are. It's just like, we all love horses so much. So like, let's all be friends. I'm like, I just think it's the coolest approach. And it's just the best community. So feel so fortunate to be able to work in this community. So, we're coming up here on the hour, but I think we have time for one more question. If you're up for it, Patricia. And I would love to hear from you, in the 33 years since you guys started ECOGOLD. Is there anything that was like most surprising, or even if you don't have a biggest surprise, most rewarding that's happened?
Well, like when you look back, like you're proud of what you've accomplished. And like, I'm not a big like looking back. I'm always looking forward. But I think like you have to like stop. Like the pandemic kind of helped with that because we couldn't work for 2 months. And it was like, oh my gosh, like look at everything that we've done this far. And so that, I mean, it doesn't surprise me, but it kind of surprises you when you stop and think, okay, this is how you are. And it gets easier as like the base is already there. It's easier to build on top of something. You're kind of standing on the shoulders of giants, kind of like of my father that started it. I was lucky in that side, but no. And also surprised, like I work with my family, like you guys. I still work with my mom, and no one has strangled anybody all this time. Like we've had disagreements, but if you had told me when I was 15 or 16 you're going to work with your family, I would have said no, not in a million years. And it's been awesome. We get to share that journey. It's great.
So amazing. Yeah, what a gift. That's very special. And I also want to take this time to give you like such kudos for the reputation that you've earned for just being joyful and doing the right thing and being forward thinking, and it's like your approach is, you can tell that you're serving other people and serving greater good in addition to building a business, and that it's genuine. Even in the advice that you've given us, your brain just works that way. And it's one of the many reasons that since the moment I met you, I wanted to be around you more. I really admire you as a person and as a business leader. So thank you for being you. And maybe to end, you can tell us where people can find ECOGOLD on social, or what your website is, or if you'll be at events, anything like that.
Yeah, so I'll be at the Kentucky Treat event. That's my next one. And then if there's any Canadians listening, at the Royal Horse Show, our website is ecogold.ca. It's not .com. It's .ca. And what are the socials? It's just ECOGOLD on Facebook and Instagram, and I think we're on TikTok too, but I don't run any of those things, so don't message me there.
Thank goodness. Just thank goodness, because it's a big job to run those. Well, thank you so much, Patricia. We're excited to see you in person at Land Rover, and excited to see what ECOGOLD is coming up with next too, because I know you guys have some fun things in the works. So thank you again for taking the time tonight.
Thanks, guys.